Our second look at reform is going to focus on women's rights and educational reform. So following the War of 1812, with few exceptions, gender roles are clearly defined and delineated. Most activities will take place within the home and family unit, and women completed many manufacturing tasks at home. Sewing and weaving really take up much of their time, and as fabrics become available for purchase, wives and women will buy them for the purpose of still making clothing. Men are considered head of the household by custom and by law, but we're seeing that change is on the horizon. For example, you take a family farm. It works best when a husband and wife work together as a team. And fathers, as time goes on, they're not always going to be able to control their children as they had in the past. There will be state rights that are going to be fought for, but change on a national scale will go very slowly. One of the biggest turning points in the movement comes in the summer of 1848, when 5 women decided to hold a convention in a church in Seneca Falls, New York. And this church was known to be sympathetic to what were called radical causes. Among the planners were 55-year-old Lucretia Mott and 32-year-old Elizabeth Cady Stanton. It was Elizabeth Cady Stanton who drafted a declaration for consideration by all attendees. And this thing is clearly modeled after the Declaration of Independence. One of the most radical ideas that she wanted added was allowing women suffrage. Suffrage meaning the right to vote, and most viewed this as extraordinary. But abolitionist Frederick Douglass was among the few who really supported this notion. Now, ultimately, the convention sought to address deficiencies in the areas of education and economic opportunity. And they also tied the women's rights movement to additional causes like temperance, abolition, and advancing peace. Now again, we're looking at increased state rights. Property rights do continue to increase. Voting spreads to western areas. So we're taking a look at, say, Wyoming, which was a territory. You tended to find that western areas were more receptive to female suffrage. Custody rights are afforded to women. And not only in this New York case, not only is it a woman who gains custody, but it is a former slave, Sojourner Truth, who we'll see when we look at the abolition movement. She sues for custody of her son. She wins. All right, and there were even schools that opened up for the purpose of training teachers. Women will enter teaching as kind of the first major profession that's open to them. Now, they're expected to quit the profession once married, so it's only single women, but it is progress nevertheless. So tied in to women's rights and the movement for increased rights is education reform. Horace Mann became state superintendent of schools in Massachusetts in the late 1830s, and he championed what were called common schools. This meant that each school was tuition-free, supported by taxpayer dollars, and there were statewide standards for curriculum, textbooks, and facilities. The teachers were trained at normal schools, so these females who now get a chance at the profession, they're trained at the normal schools. And these state institutions are funded at taxpayer expense. The common ideologies for these schools included patriotism, good character, and civic participation. And religion is also a significant component of instruction. Common schools became popular in cities and towns, where apprenticeship programs were declining, and it really gives children an outlet for advancement. Now, in rural areas, the need to keep children working on family farms really competed with these schools. The vast majority of students learn to read by using the Bible, and these schools are going to primarily provide a primary education. And that's not to say there isn't secondary or even higher education, because during this time frame we'll see the rise not only of college in general, but what are called booster colleges. So by 1848, there are a total of 113 colleges in the United States. 16 of them are what we call state colleges, and the rest are religious in nature. Now, booster colleges are designed, as you see here, to boost the image of frontier towns. If you want people to move there, you build a school. Most of them are founded by non-educators, and they do provide formal education, but they also sponsored lectures that the general public could attend. Now, Charles Grandison Finney, he of the Second Great Awakening fame, was hired at the newly created Oberlin College in 1835, and he eventually ran the institution. This college is known not only for being co-ed, but also being open to outright abolition. It's going to serve as a stopover on the Underground Railroad as slaves fled into Canada. So women's rights, education reform, two things that are really tied together. And we also see tie-ins with the religious reform movement as well.